Hi, good evening, good morning to everyone. It happens to the best of us. We had a bit of a technical glitch, but it's really about how quickly we can get up. And I think Joe and Quinten did a good job to restore the platform and make sure that everything is good to go. You should have received a link in your email. I see my link has also just arrived in my inbox. So if people are still trying to log in, they should be able to see that link. Welcome to everyone, and thanks for being here. Thanks for spending your time with us. I'm KK Diaz, CEO of A Game Business, based in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I'm happy to be co-hosting with my friends, Quinten and Joe, from the Connectors podcast. And this is hopefully one of many to come. This is from Ideas to Airwaves, how to create your own podcast. And without much to say, I'd like to hand it over to you guys. Quinten, Joe, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, KK. It's such a pleasure to be here chatting to you again about marketing stuff. And today specifically focusing on podcasting. So as KK mentioned, we've been producing the Connectors podcast, and we're co-hosts, Jolyn Showalter and myself. We've been doing this for 1.5 years now, and we have put out 50 episodes, I think it is. So yeah, thank you. It's a lot. It's impressive. So
big milestone. Congrats.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we're here to share with you what we've learned over the last 1.5 years. And please do stay to the end of the webinar, because we're going to be sharing some free templates that you can take away with you, which include a project planner and some social media templates. And of course, you're going to get a copy of these slides, this presentation that we're doing, which is full of links and stuff.
And I see we have someone else that just joined us. Thank you for joining us, and we appreciate your patience with the link and the technical issues. Hello, Jabuli. Jabul.
So it's Jabu.
Jabuli. Welcome. Thank you. Thanks, KK. Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Hi. Sorry about the technical issues. Thank you very much for checking your email. All right, let's go to, shall we introduce KK?
Yes, yeah. So Quinten just shared a little bit about ourselves. Oh, Jeff Lewis is jumping on. Cool. And so KK and Quinten and I collaborated on an episode to talk about A Game Business a little while back, and we thought we might have some cool things to collaborate on, and we've been talking since then and just sharing ideas. And KK offered for us to be on his podcast as well, and now we are working on this webinar together, and we thought, why not share with our networks on how to start a podcast. So I'll pass it over to you, KK.
Thanks, Joe. I guess the idea now is to talk a little bit about a bit of background in terms of where we are, in terms of at least where it all started, right? At least from my end, where it all started is really, I guess, people won't necessarily have the same background as I do. I started out as a self-taught record producer. I used to have a record label. Back in the day, I think it was shut down in 2007 after a bad failure, and it wasn't the last. Many have followed since. But I've really had, the pleasure of learning with purists who are engineers, and really taking the time to learn how audio sound works. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of broadcasting, of sharing messages, really helping the artists, at least at the time, to take their brands globally. And we got a chance to do some music across the globe with some artists, and it was great. But I had really been bitten by the engineering bug, and it's never left me, and that's why I still to this day enjoy podcasting. I was letting the guys know a little bit earlier that this morning I had an opportunity to go and do an in-person interview of the CEO the X dimension data, now called entity data. But that's just to say, to this day, I still enjoy anything that has to do with audio, with broadcasting. And maybe without saying too much, one of my biggest takeaways over the last couple of years, especially when it comes to digital transformation, has had to do with, with the idea that every business needs to become a media house. And what essentially that means is, you need to have your own content that you not only produce, but that you disseminate, you broadcast out there, you share. And I think it's becoming more and more important that we all find a way of being able to produce our own content, put it out there, share it, and of course, make it relevant and useful to our audience, useful being that this is content they can utilize in their either day-to-day lives or in their businesses in order to help them, to achieve whatever goals specifically that you can assist them with. I think, that's what I'd like to say. And then just to say, over the next couple of slides, the team and I are going to be sharing some ideas, but they will essentially run the show, and I'll come in to drop in my 2 cents here and there.
Thanks, KK. And that brings us to our first question. And I just want to mention, we do have a couple discussion slides throughout. So we'll leave it to you. You can post something in the chat, which is down on the right-hand corner. It's the center one that looks like a little chat bubble. Or you can just raise your hand and ask the question verbally if you like. So we'd love to have some discussion. And the first question is, why a podcast? You heard from KK as to why he started one and what his passion was in broadcasting and music. And for Quinten and I, we started the Connectors as like a little project. Actually, we were both in a reinvention course, and we had learned a lot about reinventing ourselves, reinventing programs, and different things. And one thing we noticed that was kind of common throughout us learning that was this connection and the networking and the people that we were meeting throughout taking that program. So once we got together and we found out that we were both interested in starting a show together, the word connection came up a lot, and then the Connectors was formed. So our show is about human connection and the connections that you make that help you create a sort of a longer lasting life and create better community around you. So it's really about creating that community for us, which we've managed to do pretty well, I think. So we'd like to know from you, why would you like to start a podcast, if you'd like to share, and what sort of things are you interested in? What kind of niche markets particularly would you like to be interested in as well? Anyone want to say something there? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next slide.
Right there. Yeah, come join the conversation. How's it going?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, that's right. I was having some issues earlier, and I just kind of
yeah. Sorry about that.
Well, no worries. No. I personally was considering or talking about a podcast just because I had a fairly interesting experience through business that really affected myself personally, my family, and finances and everything, from just getting into business thinking what only experience can teach you, and then going through that experience realizing they're small errors, but they can cost a lot. I ended up writing a book on my experience, and then I thought, some people read it and they were like, that'd be something that to kind of sit and talk with other people who've been through these experiences. What was this? Seemed like something small or something you trusted or something that turned into a big error, and how it affected their lives. And I kind of always thought that would be, since I've wrote or talked to these people, that would kind of give someone a way to meet other people, but also kind of talk about what they went through and help others who are either starting in business and how to avoid those things.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea. It's going to be authentic. The stories are going to come from your experience, from the people around you. Can I ask what stopped you from getting started?
Just how busy I am. I'm still in the process of rebuilding my business from from what happened, and then family and children and everything else comes along with it. Finances, time, another big one. To do so, I don't want to do something kind of half-ass. I want to make sure it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think everything always takes a lot more time than what you actually think it does, just to do it right. So I didn't want to start something and realize, okay, this is more than I can handle at the moment.
Well, we totally get that, Jeff. And Quinten and I are going to share some tips on how to streamline some things, because we've had to do that many times over just to make things a little easier on ourselves as well. So, yeah. So I'm glad you could join today.
Yeah, for sure. We've tried different things that we realized very quickly after like 3 weeks. Oh no, we can't keep going at this pace. That's not going to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
We want to still be friends. We want to still have a good relationship. And starting to bicker at each other, and that's not good.
Yeah. So
go for it, Joe.
Oh, okay. So some reasons to start a podcast: to establish yourself as an authority or thought leader in a niche or industry, to share expertise, insights, and unique perspectives with a wider audience, to build a loyal community of listeners and followers, to leverage a podcast as a platform for networking, collaboration, and business growth. And I'm sure there are a plethora of more to add, but these are just some of the main reasons that we know why others start podcasts, why we started a podcast, and yeah.
And we focus, if you look at the last points, we're focusing on it as a platform for networking and collaboration right now. And behind the scenes, we're sort of developing different projects and programs. They may come out and be part of the business, be part of the growth of the business. But we're taking it very sort of engagement and awareness right now, just the podcast for now and the marketing of that.
Yeah. Okay. So some challenges. So we wanted to create a discussion on challenges, and I'll jump to the next slide. We'll talk about some of the challenges that maybe we faced, and then we can ask you, I think, well, Jeff, we heard from you why you haven't maybe started one yet, but maybe somebody else wants to mention if they have started a podcast or thought of it. What are some of the things that you think might challenge you in terms of moving forward? So go for it, Quinn.
Sure. So we're pretty lucky because we are a team of two, and that means that we can sort of divide and conquer. We can split up the roles and the responsibilities and the jobs that we do. So I had a couple of decades of experience being a music teacher, so I was very used to sorting the music for assemblies and concerts and big events, and also recording my learners and having to submit their recordings for exams and all that sort of stuff. So I had the technical knowledge. That was great. However, I didn't have the sort of networking and the marketing and the other areas. So I rely heavily on Joe to help support all of these complex navigations and things. She's also a way better people person than I am.
I don't know if that's true, but
what were some of your challenges coming into the podcast, Joe?
I would say that, there's some of this fear, right? There's a little bit of a fear, and we'll talk about this further down in our slides. But I think it's even just like those personal challenges where you feel a bit of, imposter syndrome. Who's going to want to listen to me? Who's going to want to hear what I have to say? I had to get over that. And then I think I was a little scared on the technical side, but knowing that Quinten had the technical expertise, that was really helpful because he does our post-production. So the team of two of us, I do a lot of the front end organizing and Quinten does a lot of the back end, and that works really well for us. I would say, other challenges we've faced along the way is just, okay, how are we going to navigate our scheduling? So sometimes, our schedules are different. How are we going to schedule which days we record, which days that, we spend working on the podcast? because there's also working on the business and working in the business, right? So you have to keep things relevant, keep things moving based on what's going on, out in the world and the marketplace, but also just keeping to your true self as well. So there's these challenges of keeping your voice and wanting to keep things the way that you feel are authentic to your show and to who you are, but then you get this pull from social media and all these other things as well. So there's a lot of things to navigate in when it comes to a podcast. And it can sound scary, but really the thing you just need to do is start. And I would say one thing that helped Quinten and I at the beginning was we recorded a bunch of shows up front just so that we could hear what our voices sound like, get used to our equipment. We wanted to make sure we had the right microphones and the right headphones and all those things. And we had to do a lot of tests. And there were even a few people at the beginning that said our show quality didn't sound great. So we had to go back and check, why didn't that work and what did we have to change? So luckily Quinten are pretty adaptable and flexible, where we will always look at what's not working and how we can make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's different for you, KK, isn't it? Because you work on the podcast mostly on by yourself.
Well, pretty much. So when I started out some years ago, I had a crew. I had 2 camera guys and a sound person. It's a little embarrassing actually to look back at those videos, because I was so formal. I used to have a tie and everything, because the business used to deal with a much more medium to large business kind of audience. But I had a crew back then, and yeah, over time it just either dissolves or comes back in another form or another. Because I remember when I came back, I started only just with Zoom, right?
Mm.
I still had my equipment, but I realized that hey, there are other ways to kind of shortcut the process, right? Instead of needing all of these hands and expertise, it's just about recording. If you can record and make sure the sound and both the visuals look good enough, right? It doesn't have to be the greatest. And if anybody looks at my podcast, you can literally see what I'm talking about. At least when it comes to the videos, it's hardly perfect. So to people like Jeff or anybody else that's trying to start out, one of the people I look up to is Seth Godin, and one of the things he always says is just ship it, meaning just get it out. It isn't about it being perfect. So that's always my philosophy. Today was the first time I went and did one on my own, because it was an emergency kind of invitation. I said, what, I'm going to do it anyway. Just in closing this comment, I want to go back to the type of experience that Quinten and I have. At the end of the day, there's still quite a bit to learn. So even if you're starting out, you'll find that people like Quinten and I actually are starting somewhat at the same level as you, because it's not the typical external in-person type recordings of large groups of people. It's just yourself, and you can literally just start with the phone, and then figure out how to balance the levels, things like that, which we all learn because it's for a new platform. I mean, the idea of broadcasting via the podcast isn't something that's always been around. So whenever we started, it's kind of trying to find your own pair of shoes that's going to fit you. And so you want to go through that process and figure it out. And it's in figuring out that you actually gain the confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Through the experience. I totally agree, KK. Yeah.
And one good thing about podcasting is that it doesn't have to be highly polished and perfect, because there's this understanding that it's mass-produced media that's going to be consistent and repetitive. And, we bring out an episode every 2 weeks. That's our schedule. Every 2 weeks, you're going to get an episode. It's not like having to be on the news reporting or creating a documentary or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's another good point, Quinten, is if you're thinking about starting a podcast, decide how often you want to release an episode. Some people do 2 a week, some people do 1, some people do once every 2 like us. So it just depends what you have capacity for.
Some
So,
people do a short series for
yeah.
a couple of months, and then they give it a break until the next good idea for the next short series comes on the screen.
Like seasons. I've seen people do
Mm.
seasons. We haven't done that, but it's a way that you can also give yourself a break, I think, too. If you do that, you chunk it out.
Mhm.
And also just to add, if I can just quickly add this, you see in the beginning, when you start out your podcast, you want to have at least anywhere between 3 to 6 episodes, so that that gives you enough time to practice, right? And get enough of them going, which could take you a month or two, whatever the length would be, prior to you going public and going live and actually broadcasting it. So you can have a nice chunk of a few episodes that you've done, so that by the time you start, at least anyone who's checking out your podcast, or those that you are sharing with, at least you have 3, 4, maybe 6 episodes to start. That's always a good way to start. It helps you with the practice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've taken the groups of challenges and we've divided them up into 3 different ones. The first one we're going to talk about is the technology challenges and the solutions that we've used. So some of the challenges are setting up recording equipment, editing the audio files, and then getting this stuff published and out to a hosting platform. So I've got some tech tools that we'll look at in the next couple of slides. All of these are free to use or free to sign up and use the basics. You don't need to start with a good microphone. We purchased microphones that are specific for podcasters. You don't need to do that. We purchased headphones. You don't need to do that. You can get started, as KK said, on your mobile with an app called CapCut. And that will do pretty much everything that you need to if you're restricted to mobile.
So some of the, what's that?
Oh, no, I was inviting you to.
So yeah, some of the other solutions, just a few on our list. Well, I'll jump over to our next slide. These were the ones that Quinten was mentioning were free. So Audacity, CapCut, Canva, Camtasia's paid. ChatGPT, obviously you can get the upgraded version of paid, but you can get the AI version free, and Grammarly free. I just discovered Grammarly the other day, and what it helped me do, which was amazing, was take the transcript, because we always transcribe every episode, and it'll take the whole transcription and summarize it into show notes. So it's such a great tool, because before I actually used to listen back to our episodes. And then before I was transcribing and make notes out of that, which was also really good, because I picked up some other things from the show that I didn't hear when we were recording. But now I listen to it again, like eventually, but I usually go back and I just use the AI tools available, and it's really helpful. And then I go back and sort of jig it to the way that I want, and a little bit more of that human component into the writing. And then Spotify for podcasters is free, Publer's free, which is a tool that you can use for scheduling your posts on social media. So if you don't want to do them like day by day, you can schedule them ahead of time. And then Notion is free as well. So I'll go to the next slides here, because Quinten is going to talk about some of these tools.
Yeah, so this is a long list of stuff, and this is the list that of tools that we're using after a year and a half. So we started with Audacity and Spotify for podcasters. Like, we were doing the sound engineering, and then we got it up and we could send it out through Spotify. And then we just realized that there were other things that we needed, so we added them. Audacity is great. It's free. It's light. It's powerful. This is Camtasia, which I use a lot for video and e-learning content. This is a paid version, but there is CapCut, which is a free version for video editing. And you can use that on your mobile phone as well. Jolyn's got it on her mobile.
I use it on my phone a lot. It's so easy to use, yeah. And it'll give you templates. You can create all kinds. You can take a video and cut it up, or you can add videos to a template and make a fun little compilation if you like. There's lots of ways that you can use it.
You can reuse templates, you can reuse the content, which is always useful because no one wants to recreate from new every time. Spotify for podcasters is Spotify, and it's their specific for podcasters. So you can put your posts up there, you can schedule posts, like you can see the top 3 posts are scheduled. I'm showing this slide because it was kind of good for showing how Joe and I divide our roles. So I do the sound stuff. I get the MP3 up on Spotify. Joe finishes the content. She sends me a text and says, hey, the content for the next episode is done. I go in, I make sure everything is ready to go, all the links work, yada, yada, yada. I send her back a link saying, this is done. And we're ready for this Friday's podcast.
And I don't know if you can see the status, but as you can see, some are scheduled and some are published. So when they're scheduled, Quinten's put those and they're ready to go. They're just not published for the date yet. So you can put in the date that they will be published ahead of time, which is great. So usually Quinten and I are about 3 shows ahead of our actual release dates, so that we already have some pre-recordings in the bag, just in case something happens, or we're ahead of the game and we're not doing them just week by week. Yeah.
Yeah, one other thing we like to do is give our guest, because we're a guest-focused podcast, so we want to remind the guests when their episode's coming out and if they've got any new information to share, so we can give our listeners the most up-to-date information. This is Publer, which Joe said. It gives you sort of calendar social media posting. So this is for my own work. So you can see that I'm sending stuff out on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. It's useful as well because you can put in all of your posts and then just keep reusing and recycling the content. So that's a good one. That's Publer. And then we've tried a couple of platforms for websites, and we've only now just hit on the one that we wanted. We thought we liked Notion for a while because it's a sensible way for you to put a lot of content if you're a learning-based podcast and you need to show people a lot of content, lists, processes, etc. However, we don't need it. We don't need that. So we're just showing this as an option because we did create it, we did try it, and we're not using it in the end.
One thing Notion does do, though, that I really like, you can create like project plans out of it. You can store a lot of your content there. And also I've seen people create like promo pages. So if you want to create a really good experience for your guests from beginning to end, at the end, like when they're ready, their show is ready to be released, you could send them out a promo page or something like that from Notion that you created that they'd be able to share with their network or their audience. So what we typically do is we send an email. I have sort of a string of emails that go out, and the last email I send them a link to a Google folder that they have access to with assets. So these are things that I've created in Canva for social media posting, or any of the posts that we've done for them. And then some of the clips that Quinten has taken from the show that were really good that we thought that they might like for their network as well. So that's something that we offer to our guests.
Canva is really powerful. The free version, it creates a lot of visual stuff. So it creates social media posts, little videos, little animations. These are the posts that Joe was talking about. So we cut little interesting video snippets and we pop them into these, and then you just download it as an MP4 or as an image, and you can send these out. In fact, this slideshow that we're going through now is created through Canva. So yeah, we use it a lot. It's great.
It's a really good tool. Yeah. And you can have collaborators in Canva as well. So Quinten and I have a shared collaboration for the connectors, so we can always see each other's things that we're creating as well. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for joining.
Okay, so here's a template that you can use. So it's a project plan template. It's a free download. I can just show you what it looks like really quickly.
So we wanted this webinar to be really useful and actionable. We wanted to give you some steps on the ladder to help you get to that first podcast. So here you can see our launch plans. So we recorded 3 and then we sent them out and we realized that we needed to redo them. And then we thought, okay, we're going to do this like step by step. So we decided to create a bunch of things of who we are. Who are we? What do we think about ourselves? What's our style going to be? What's our social media look like, feel like? What is the structure of an episode? And then we created a bunch of countdown social media posts that you can see on the screen. So you can also see the guest preparation that we've done with links, with emails, reminders to tell you to send this email, including a Google link, etc. This podcast launch plans template is literally your project planning for everything that you need.
Everything that you need. So this is all the things that we did from beginning to end until our first episode launch.
So please take a copy and use it. Let us know how you've used it and if it was any use for you.
I'm also planning to use this one because my own project and planning and process around the podcast needs a lot of help.
Nice. That's good to know. Thanks, man. It's a long list, so delete what's not useful.
No, I'm sure I'll use it.
So we want to get into some of the human solutions of podcasting. So we talked about the technical. So this is, sorry, just one second. I just want to get to my notes. So human solutions, we have, content creation, make your content engaging and compelling. So think about who your audience is, know your audience, who are you trying to target, who are you trying to focus on. What kind of community do you want to create with that engagement? How you structure your content is big as well, like the types of wording that you're using, the hashtags that you're using, maintaining consistency with your messaging. So again, we're the connectors. We always have this tone of connection. That's like our ethos, and that's what we always speak to when we have people on the show. And then reusing your content. So there's a lot of opportunity to always reuse what you are posting. So posting, creating, all those things. So we do a lot of that. We also do a lot of, what do we call it? I guess cross-pollination. So this is an example of what we're doing today, right? So we're working with someone that we worked before, KK. We had him on our show. We've been on his show, and now we're creating this webinar together. So there's lots of opportunity, and that can happen through podcasting as well. Mm-hmm. And then, getting into some of the things that we talked about before, self-doubt. Sometimes you have a bit of imposter syndrome. As KK mentioned, just get something out. Like, good is good enough, right? You can always tweak it later. It's just getting used to using your voice and putting yourself out there and recognizing that you have something of importance to say that people need to hear. And really honing in on that, and find your people too. I find like Quinten and I really found a great tribe of people. Even the people that we've had on the show, we still stay in contact with, them. And every once in a while they'll comment on our LinkedIn posts and vice versa. And, we've created this really sense of community through the connectors. And if that's something that you're looking for with your podcast, it's a great way to establish that as well. So using your social media platforms that geared towards your audience is also a big thing. So we predominantly use LinkedIn and Instagram mostly. We did try Facebook, we did try Twitter, and we have done YouTube as well. YouTube, we want to get back into more in the fall, but Facebook and Twitter weren't really our area. And again, you just have to think about how much time you have and how much you want to be posting on these platforms. But Publer, for example, will help you distribute to all of those platforms as well. you are learning the art of storytelling. So, helping your audience understand who you are. And if you really want them to get to know you, do it through your voice and through showing them. So sometimes Quinten and I were doing fun little posts on like, this is what we're doing on the weekend. And this is how we're connecting out in nature, out in a networking event or whatever it might be. But really get your audience to know who you are, because it helps them connect to you and then want to stay engaged more often with what you're doing. Anything else you'd like to add there as well, Quinten?
Maybe on the confidence and self-doubt, we tried a bunch of things. We used to do vocal warm-ups 5 minutes before we would do a recording, just to get that voice warmed up and ready. We would record little snippets of things and send them. I would send recordings to Jo at the beginning and be like, what does this sound like for a social media call to action? And she would record it and send it back, and she'd say, what do you think about it sounding like this? And so we would play around and try things. We've gone for improv classes to talk off the cuff and be able to just bounce onto a stage and be able to talk to people about any subject. So whatever, you might need to try some things and play around and be playful with it at the beginning until you found where your voice is.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people try to engage in very trending topics too. So if you spend time on Instagram, or TikTok or whatever, you'll see a lot of your algorithms will obviously show mostly what you're following and who you're following. But like there's a lot of trending topics out there. I'm sure we know what they are. We see a lot of them these days. So, you can stick to that, or you can try to find topics that are a little bit more compelling, or have guests on the show that is really tapping into something with your niche. Just depends what you're looking for, but there's so many options there. Is there anything else you'd like to add, KK, in terms of the human solutions that you
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jo. So the idea of I guess the self-criticism and the self-doubt, it's really about shutting down the negative voices in your head. I think it's something we all deal with, whether it's podcasting or something else that we've been doing for years. So it's not the negative voices won't necessarily come because it's something new. It's just as human beings, that's where we are. Just you need to just train yourself. And it's also about staying calm when things go wrong. When you're starting out, I think maybe it's a good idea to start solo, maybe do 1 or 2 solo episodes, and then invite people. And maybe you start with friends, right? You could invite somebody you're very close to, that you're confident in terms of trying your first 1 or 2 episodes with. I think definitely do that. It helps with the confidence. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't get used to hearing my own voice, right? Now and again, I cringe a bit, but it's really about loving yourself, and just constantly reminding yourself why you are actually doing this. Those are just the few tips that help me with, the human aspect of hearing your voice and putting your voice out there in public. And you might feel that it's a bit worse when you do video as well, but the same applies. You just really need to love yourself, shut down the negative voices, and remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing.
I love that. That's a great point, just to love yourself and to not worry so much about what everyone else is thinking. Totally. It took me probably 3 months to not cringe. 3 or 4 months to not cringe at the sound of my own voice anymore, but I'm actually over it. So, it's good. I never thought I would be.
I still cringe. I still cringe, but I think one of the good things is that when I'm working on this stuff, it's to put our guest forward. So I'm always like, let's make the guest sound good. Let's make Jo sound good. Let's make Quinten sound good. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, everybody sounds good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so there's a
Okay.
lot of process stuff that you got to think about, because goodness me, going from that recording to actually hitting publish, there's actually a lot of steps that are in between that. You got to plan the guests, you got to get them on time, you've got to record it, you got to download it, you've got to edit and prepare it, you got to figure out the social media around it, and then you got to get it up and ready to go. So to help you with the guest side,
Sorry, I'm actually just going to go back to that just to talk about a few more things. Sorry, before you jump in. Yeah, so as Quinten said, there's a lot of process steps that happen in between. And we do have a template that we're going to share with you after. I can share some of the things that we've done just to help with our guest experience, and then the process between Quinten and I and how we're exchanging things. So to start with, we had created a style guide, and our style guide I feel like Quinten did an amazing job on our style guide, and I feel like it's basically who the connectors are. And we share that with our guests before they come on the show, so they get a good idea of who Quinten is, who I am, and what we're collectively trying to do. And then, we usually send them, check out our shows. Do you want an episode to listen to, just to see if it's a good fit? So that's something that we do at the beginning of when we're getting guests as well. And then we have an episode template that we follow. So there's an episode doc that says the date we're recording, the episode number, the person's name, and we have an intake form that they fill out, and it automatically goes into a spreadsheet for us, and then we can copy everything into our episode template. And then that way it's just a nice guideline for us as we're going through the show. And I put all the show notes in there that are going to go into social media. So it's like our one-stop shop, where Quinten and I know exactly who's doing what at what stage. And that really helps us out with our process between us as well. Yeah, we have a guest list template we're going to share with you on the next slide. We have email templates that we created that we send out at the beginning when we're trying to get a new guest. So we have a guest template that we're like, hey, come be on our show. And then we have ones in between leading up to the show, just as a reminder, so they know when the show recording is. Some things that they can do for setting up their environment. So it's a great recording environment, either having headphones, making sure they're in a quiet space, and things like that. So we just find these things a little bit helpful as we're going through all those steps. So, and then we have a bit of a social media schedule. So we know the dates that things are going out on social media. And, we have some pre-launch things, milestones, events. So we're always sort of keeping up on everything. And every 3 months, we do a review of our processes and how we're doing. What do we like? What don't we like? And we make some changes at that time.
Okay, as we show the template, I am just gonna say that by our work, Joe and I do a lot of project planning, so we're a little bit OCD about the organization side. Please don't feel like you gotta be like this. It's just we like our lists, we like our columns, we like to tick things off. So please don't feel like you need to do it.
It might seem like a lot and overwhelming. It just, it comes from our project management background for sure. Mm-hmm. So this is it's a very simple template. Just, shows the name of our guests, where they're located, because usually Quinten gets people in the Montreal area and I do in London, and then we do across the globe as well, but we'd like to know where they're from, industry, email. We want to know if their episode coincides with any campaigns for their business. So do they have a book coming out? Do they have a course that they're releasing? Do they have a webinar, etc., that they want to coordinate with their release? And we try to manage that as best we can. And then these are sort of all the things that I have to send out. So sending the calendar, the pre-recording meeting link, and our emails, and then we have our release date, and then we'll sort of check them off as we go. And then usually at the bottom, we have a list of other people that we potentially want to reach out to as well. Any thoughts or questions on that?
I just want to say I'm really enjoying having friends who are as organized as the two of you.
Why, thank you.
Really inspiring. It's really inspiring, and
No,
it just forces one to up their game, you know. So appreciate it very much.
It's our pleasure. We're here to share. I'm glad it's useful. Yeah. So where are we off to now? Right. So once you've got your podcast and it's up, it's running, you've got your 10 episodes or whatever you've decided is a big benchmark.
I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
There we go.
There's an example of staying calm right there.
Totally. Tech hitches, it's got nothing on us.
There we go.
Yeah, so if you like, we're right now, Joe and I in the podcast, we're at the stage where we're starting to think outside the box. We said at the beginning, we're going to focus on making people aware of us and aware of the podcast, and we're going to try and engage them. And that's all we're going to focus on for like a year, maybe 2 years. So now we're thinking, okay, do we have the energy to move forward with the next idea? Because podcasting is great, but can we add something to it that maybe we can monetize? Maybe we can use for better networking. So we're about to release our website. Amazing. And this is one of the, thank you. And this is one of our think outside the boxes. We want to have a little place on the internet for us where we can collect all of our stuff. And then from there, who knows? Where are we going to go from there? But just to encourage you to think outside the box.
Some ideas and some podcasters that we've had on the show, we know what like some things that they're doing are really cool. So a couple people we've had on our show is we just released something, Jamar Jones, he was just on a couple weeks ago, and then Ben Albert, we had him a little while ago. I would say they are really great at networking, and they've also created a community and events around what they're doing. So their websites encompass all that. It shows all their podcasts, all their upcoming events. They created like a hub for their communities. They have all kinds of engagement going on. So, you know, truly that's sort of the place that we'd like to get to, is where we have all that under our sort of marketing umbrella and everything that we're working on. So those are just some ideas in terms of where you could continue to take your podcast, and even doing live podcasts, live events. Quinten and I have talked about that as well. And it's really, I think, just being ready for the opportunity and jumping in, right? So Quinten and I both like to be organized, and sometimes we do get to this place where we're like, not sure if it's ready yet. But as back to KK was saying, you know, sometimes good is good enough, and you really just need to try and see how it goes. And
sometimes one of us can recognize that the other person is a bit hesitant or something, and we'll go, it's okay, it's the right time, just press send.
Yeah.
And we just start the ball rolling, you know.
Yeah, we did that this week.
So yeah. And it was good, good for both of us to turn the page on that new thinking outside the box, I guess.
Networking opportunities, I would say go to networking events. It's a great place to meet people and to find new guests for your show, because you're going to meet all kinds of people from different industries, and you know, hopefully, and it's a great place to hand out your card or to show people, you know, here's my QR code for the podcast, or just start the discussion. People love talking about podcasts. That's what I find. A lot of people listen to them. It's a great way. It's a great opener. But networking events are a really great place to grow your community and also get people to come on your show. And with that, I'd like to say LinkedIn is great as well. Quinten and I have had a lot of people reach out to us on LinkedIn to be a guest. So once you start building your brand in your community and you're posting often and people see who you are, you don't have to go out as often to find people to be on your show. People will naturally gravitate towards you to be on your show. Yeah. Anything else there, KK, that you can think of in terms of how you're utilizing your podcast or how it's evolved and things that you've done?
Yeah, I think it's such a big door opener, right? I mean, people like Alan, who's the CEO of NTT Data. I'd never be able to speak to that guy, shake his hand, get his contact details, but because the PR lady who does PR for the company, we had done something in the past, also a podcast. We had done another event that they are part of, and because I met her there in Cape Town, she's also based in Johannesburg, and so whenever there are events, I get invited to the podcast, and to the events, and I'll make sure to ask for a spot at the event and to then be introduced to these top connects, which I'm really enjoying. So the biggest thing is that's what it is. And maybe the second one, just to add, it really does help to build that trust. The more people hear your voice, the more they see your face. It really does break those barriers that so many of us have when we're trying to create connections and trust with prospects and leads, especially high value ones. So that would be my 2 cents in as far as that's concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just on the last one, content repurposing, I know this all sounds like a lot, but once you do build up a content base, you have a lot of content that you can repurpose. So if you're getting tired of even your social media posts, like someone's not going to remember, someone you posted a year ago, potentially, maybe a little clip about a great quote they said or something on your show, but you might want to reuse it because maybe it's relevant again. So don't be afraid to reuse content and repost things, and again, to cross collaborate with other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally. And I mean, you look at us now, that's exactly what happened, right? And one thing leads to the next, and next thing you're doing big things. And it's really about just taking it one day at a time, doing that first episode, and you may have to chuck it. I remember Quinten said, when you guys started out, you kind of chucked away the first few takes because sometimes it's part of the process, right? And it's really just about sticking with whatever process you have and trusting it and moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we want to talk a little bit about marketing, and I'm going to pass this one over to KK because this is his wheelhouse.
Thanks. So look, what I don't want to do is overwhelm people, right? In terms of what over and above what you guys have mentioned, there isn't any other extra long list that people need to consider. The same marketing activities that they're currently doing, I would say stick with those, right? And hopefully those include kind of the mainstay stuff like newsletter and social media. Even if you don't have a newsletter and you have a small following on social media, that is a great place to start in terms of marketing. So what the formula that I typically use is, I'll take whatever podcast episode we have. I mean, you look at today's post on LinkedIn. There's a 30-minute long podcast episode that I did with Tim Holmes. And what I'll do is I'll take a very small clip of that whole thing and use it as a trailer. And then I post it on LinkedIn. I post it on Facebook. And because X/Twitter uses a slightly shorter format, I'll simply just shorten the same trailer so that it fits, the format and then the space that's limited on X. So yeah, it's as simple as that. If you have a newsletter and you have subscribers, whatever it is that you're sending them, include your podcast as an add-on as well as educational content that they can utilize. Yeah, I think start there. Don't overwhelm yourself thinking, oh, now I got to do this and do that. I got to have, 5-7 different social media profiles. No, if you're starting out by yourself, start with whatever 1-2 profiles you have. LinkedIn, maybe Facebook if you want, TikTok if you like, and start small and just take it one day at a time. That's all I really want to say from a marketing perspective. And maybe lastly, just add your name and add your logo in as many places as you want, and as far as this podcast is concerned, and you'll just grow from there. I think that's all I wanted to say about that.
That's great advice. Yeah, because people want to see that. People recognize your brand, right? Like I won't ever forget A Game Business brand. I know what your brand looks like. It's very much there. I hope people are recognizing the connectors now. Some people are. And yeah, that's great advice, KK. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Amazing. So at this point, we would like to open the floor to Q&A and to see if anyone out there has got a question. Please do share it in the chat. Please, if you've got anything to say, you can unmute your microphone and join the conversation.
I think let me start. Let me take the opportunity. So what kind of triggered the idea of a website that's obviously going to be the custodian of the podcast?
I think, I mean, like it's kind of a given that any company or organization is going to have some sort of website presence. There's got to be some sort of online presence that people can go to that is the one-stop shop. Nowadays we don't get out of our homes and walk around looking at the windows and deciding what we were going to go in and buy. We do it all online. So you got to have an online presence. I think the biggest motivator, aside from just getting an online presence up, is that Joe and I recognize that we're getting a community around us and we want to enlarge the conversation. So doing that by asking people to give us their email address for one of these templates then means that we can add them to our email newsletter and we can send them more valuable content and ideas and, like you were saying, learning, media, etc. So it's to establish ourselves more and to keep the conversation going in different ways.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you, KK, it was back sort of near the technical solutions, because I know you use Zencastr for recording and post-production. So I'm not sure if we have time, but I just wanted you to give just like a quick little overview of how that functions, because Quinten and I use Google Meet, and as we said, some of those other tools such as Audacity for recording. But you have another option, and I know some people use Riverside as well. So if people are looking for other technical solutions, do you have any thing you want to add there?
I think the ones that you listed are more than enough, and that's the other thing that sometimes I think creates the shiny object syndrome, where people don't decide, know what it's like. I think the list you guys gave is top. I mean, I use Camtasia. What else do I use? Of course, Zencastr, and I only use Zencastr because it cuts out so much of the work that I need to do manually, right? I like to be hands-on. So, as you said, Riverside, I checked out Riverside before Zencastr. I just went with Zencastr because it was a slightly cheaper option. We don't have the greatest rand-dollar exchange rate in South Africa, so that's what really made me go with Zencastr. Otherwise, I would have gone with Riverside. I would say, look, I would just go back and say start with the phone, even if it's just doing your own audio recording using the onboard note recorder thing that we all have. I think just start there, and take it from there. Really, the rest will come. You'll start recognizing from your own needs, i.e., I would like to do a screen recording, or I'd like to interview someone else. Then you look at the options you have. I would say people shouldn't come up with a 101 list of all the tools that one needs to do a podcast. I think just start with your phone and take it from there.
Yeah, no, that's great advice too.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We are going to drop our socials here. So you can scan the QR code, and please do like, subscribe, and follow. If you've got a question and you'd like to know about some of these tech issues, or you'd like a link to something, please reach out to us at theconnectorspodcast@gmail.com. We've also got our LinkedIn there. So also follow us on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Let us know if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast. KK, where can people find A Game Business?
I think for me, the easiest, look for KK Diaz on LinkedIn, A Game Business as well. That'll probably be the easiest, or search for A Game Business Podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. I know there was a lot of information, and if you ever wanted to hone down on something more specific, because there's still lots we probably didn't cover, there's lots of nuance in between all of these items. So please feel free to reach out to Quinten or myself. We're happy to give a free consultation on podcasting as well. And yeah, we hope to hear from you. And we'll be sending out this recording, or KK will be sending out the recording to his contacts, and we will as well. And we can share a copy of this slide deck as well, so that you can grab those links.
Totally. Thanks, guys. It was really informative, even for me as somebody who's been doing this for as long as I have. I think sometimes there are things we do forget, and there are things that we don't get to doing yet. You know, like those great templates you guys have. I think I myself am going to use those quite a lot. So thank you for that assistance. And I'm going to put you in the spot and say maybe the next thing to consider is something like a 5 or 7 day challenge, where perhaps for an hour one day we take people through a particular exercise to complete one aspect of their podcast, and then the following day we do something else. So think about that. I think those kind of things kind of add up in the long run. You know how it goes. So yeah, I'd really like to challenge us, including myself, to do that. But other than that, thank you guys, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for connecting and always adding value to everyone. I appreciate it. And to the audience, thanks for spending time. We did have a bit of a glitch, but as the team said, we'll share the recording with you. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to Quinten and Joe and myself if you have any questions, and we'll make sure to get the right person to help you answer those questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And stop.